Okay, you're going to see more of these vertical videos hopefully this week than you've seen in a little bit. We're going to try this format out and see if you guys like this, appreciate it, feel like it's a little bit more casual. I'm doing my work over here to make sure that I can get content to you guys and streamline the editing process. So we're going to do our best to do these this week. There's so much changing, but I wanted to share with you a book that I'm reading called Differ We Must. It's a book on Abraham Lincoln from different perspectives of people who knew him at the time. The author that writes it is probably a little bit more on the liberal side, so it's an interesting read, kind of seeing his own perspectives and his own bias about not only how he does see Abraham Lincoln, but also how he wants to see Abraham Lincoln. But it's been a really interesting read so far. And one of the things that is often talked about when describing Abraham Lincoln is his love for reading. And what's interesting is, like, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Abraham Lincoln grew up poor in a small town, had lots of aspirations, but didn't necessarily have the resources and the opportunity in the place that he lived. Reading was a huge resource for him to learn how to read well and also how to write. And he got a lot of different jobs because he could read and write very well. But a lot of what's insinuated often in books about Abraham Lincoln is that he learned so much of his information and insight on lots of things from books. And what this book is talking about, this kind of take on Abraham Lincoln, is that he didn't have access to a huge variety of books. He could grab, he grabbed whatever book he could get his hands on, but that wasn't often a huge variety of things to learn. So a lot of how he learned was through observing, listening, noting what people were talking about. If people came over to the house and, were having conversations, when they would leave, he would drill his parents on what they were talking about, making sure that he understood what they were saying and really making sure that he could remember that information. And it's interesting because, often, as I'm reading this and thinking about the challenges that Abraham Lincoln had, knowing, I wonder if he had a sense that he was up to big things. Obviously, he had a lot of ambition. But when you have a lot of limitations in your life, or a lot of challenges that seem to get in the way of that ambition, it can be easy to let the gas kind of wane and let the momentum kind of die. And yet Abraham Lincoln got creative, and he just listened and listened and listened. And it struck me, and it's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Listening is often something that is we very much dismiss it in our culture. We don't do a lot of listening. We do a lot of talking. We hear a soundbite of something and we jump into an opinion about it. And well, I'm sure there's a lot of other things about Abraham Lincoln that we'll probably talk about. That struck me, that like so much of what he learned was from listening and observing and understanding what other people were saying. And it's also likely the reason that he was very diplomatic. He was very comfortable interacting with people that he disagreed with. And he played the political game very, very well. Because at the end of the day, when you're a politician, you've got to be able to engage and work with people that don't have the same, worldview or thought process or perspective opinion about something. You need to be able to work with them well. And he was very good at that, which is likely because he learned how to listen well and how to observe and understand what people were saying. So there's this balance, right? There's a balance of listening and understanding what people are saying. Also knowing what you believe. No one's going to declare something as fact and true if they don't believe that it is, but we get better at actually looking back to the source of why we believe what we believe and making sure that we're doing the due diligence to make sure that that is true, that we're not just going off of like a TikTok and being like, oh, that's what it is, but that we're actually pausing and saying, how would I know that this is true? How can I fact check myself on what I believe, because I think that that's a huge element that we're missing in our society. Is like, people believe things are true, but it takes a lot less work and a lot less effort for them to believe that something is true, just because somebody that they follow or some influencer that they like said that this is what it is. And so it's like, oh, well, that's what it is. And yet, like, that's probably not a good way to understand that something is fact and to like really stand by something that you believe. So it's that balance of, being clear and confident about where you're getting your source and doing the due diligence to make sure it's true, standing your ground. I'm going to talk about this biblically and spiritually, right? Like, I believe that the Bible is absolutely true and that it is God's word to us, that it is complete and that it is completely and totally sufficient, which means that the way that I filter the world is through a biblical lens. And I'm going to stand my ground very clearly on that and very confidently, regardless of the different opinions that come at me. But that also means that I can listen and appreciate and have compassion and understanding and a desire to understand for people who don't agree. And actually, that makes me a better person to be able to really understand other people and understand where they're coming from and what particular struggles and strengths they have as a person. So learning the art of that balance, right? That balance between standing your ground and knowing what you believe in, having a strong ethic and a strong character that's founded on something, but also being able to listen and have compassion and understanding of other people's perspectives. That is an art. And that is one thing that I'm striving very much to not only get better at myself, but also to share and inspire in all of you here on this channel, making sure that we're learning and wanting and desiring to really understand people and to understand where they're coming from, while holding a strong ethic and character for our own worldview and how we live. And that's founded on biblical, true principles, not just as a principle itself, but because it is our way of honoring the Lord. Obedience is a form of worship. So we can worship our God by being obedient to his word and to what he calls us to do. And through that, being compassionate and loving and kind and generous in our ears and our ability to listen to other people. So this is something that is incredibly relevant in our current political landscape, among many other different elements of our lives, just one-on-one conversations with friends, in our church, in our communities. I say political because there's a lack of compassion and listening that Christians are often guilty of in the political landscape. We get really, really worked up about what's happening on an international and national stage and have our own opinions about how things are supposed to go. But we don't really listen intently to what other people are saying. And so then when we give our opinions, we feel this need to like constantly defend our opinion. And I think that if we can learn to be good listeners, to be compassionate, to be present in the way that we use our ears, and not just to hear people, but to understand what they're saying and why they're saying it, so that our conversation can start from a place of respect and honor, not start from a place of anger and frustration and rigidity, right? Like really pushing back and, not creating that openness and that compassion to start with. So let this be an encouragement to you. We all start from someplace. We all have struggles, and there's definitely areas of my life where I see my pride rise up within me and the need to defend and push against and to demean and belittle other people. And that is the work that we're all doing to say, God, put a new heart in me. Help me to have compassion and understanding. Help me to not let my pride run this relationship, because ultimately that is not honoring to you, and it's not honoring to that person who has an image of you created and designed through them. So there's my Monday take. I hope that you read some history and think about biblical elements that we can all take away. It's so fun. I love reading books from that context, even if they're not a biblical perspective or a biblical analysis of someone or something. Being able to say, that's definitely a characteristic that I get to practice. And that person learned it through X, Y, or Z. I can learn it through my own experiences in my own life. All right. I'll see you on the next one.